Hail everyone, Sean Manaloto here, or SaneKyle if you want, and I'm making Soulcalibur fan art because Soulcalibur 6 was just announced. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are into or have played Soulcalibur 6, or I mean Soulcalibur in general, like Soulcalibur 1, 2, 3, stuff like that. But it was my childhood, so I decided to create something in honor of that. Now, Soulcalibur is a fighting game from the creators of Tekken. And if you don't know Tekken, you're just not a gamer in general, I suppose. But that's okay. So you're probably here for the art, am I right? So anyway, um, PSX or PlayStation Experience just happened a few days ago, and before that, uh, the Video Games Awards just happened. So a lot of things were teased, a lot of things were announced, and Soul Calibur 6 was one of them. Now, I've been waiting 5 years or more for this to happen because 2012 was Soul Calibur 5, and that didn't do very well, even in my opinion. Soul Calibur 4 and 5 were good, but the Soul Calibur 1, 2, and 3 were amazing. So I'm really happy that they're coming out with it now that Tekken 7 is done and they've rounded up their DLC characters and stuff like that. So I'm very excited, as you can see by the fan art that I am creating right now. So only two characters were showcased, those being Sophitia and Mitsurugi. And these characters are very iconic in terms of fighting games. And because those two were the only characters announced at this moment, I decided I'm gonna make fan art of the character Nightmare, which is also one of the most iconic characters in Soul Calibur and in fighting games, in the fighting game community, I think in general. So, aside from drawing Nightmare and talking about him for how long, I decided to make have a discussion on what games are the game of the year and what I think have the best soundtrack and what I think have the best narrative and a whole bunch of other categories. You can comment that so that I can reply to them. I always read the comments anyway. So if you have like a category that I left out, because I'm gonna leave out a lot, I'm pretty freaking sure. So comment down below, and then I'll give you who I think won in that certain category. But I'll be discussing Game of the Year, Best Narrative, and Best Soundtrack for now because those are the only ones I am interested in, to be honest. So let's start off with Game of the Year first. I strongly think that Neo is Game of the Year. Nioh. Now, for those of you who don't know Neo, it's sort of like people say it's a Dark Souls samurai game. I agree, but it's more than just Souls like in general. It's more than just copying Dark Souls like Lords of the Fallen, and which I think was a decent game to be honest. But this game is from the guys who made who worked on the Warriors series, like Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, and at the same time, they had help from the Ninja Gaiden developers, Team Ninja, and they made one hell of a game, I have to say. Now, it's not just Game of the Year for me because it's a Souls-like game, because I love Dark Souls. You'll see a lot of Dark Souls fan art in my art page or my art pages, but it's not just because of that. It's because of is it the story of how the game came to being. So it's been in development hell for 15 years now, I believe, and only this year it's come out, February this year. So as such, I know that not I don't know about you guys, but I think the Japanese are very great and passionate about their games, so they put a lot of love into them. More so, I can say, than the AAA video games industry in the Western world. I'm a fan of a lot of games from there, but the AAA landscape isn't looking very good nowadays, especially. So now, Neo is a game that has been stuck in development for 15 years. First, it was one of the first. It was pitched as one of the first PS3 games ever. Okay, and even then, the atmosphere was different. It wasn't as dark and gloomy. which I think it got from Dark Souls because, as you guys know, Dark Souls is highly influential. So when the game came out, there was no day one. As far as I remember, there is no day one patch because AAA games nowadays would have a day one patch. That was my issue with Wolfenstein 2 and a whole bunch of Bethesda games. Have that one patch that if you download it, you'll have to restart your level. So, but I'm a big fan of Bethesda as well. But anyway, Neo wasn't like that. Neo was a game that was, I believe, polished to hell because 15 years, you gotta do something. You can't just Duke Nukem this stuff up, especially if you're a Japanese video game developer. That is that has a cult following for the Warrior series and stuff like that. So anyway, Neo is extremely challenging, just like Dark Souls, but it's also quite a long game. Each region, there's about 6 regions or 5, I think, and each of them have 2 to 3 main quests, and that's equivalent to one area with a boss in Dark Souls, complete with shortcuts you gotta find and stuff like that. Like this door is blocked from the other side, complete with that stuff. So anyway, I think it's Game of the Year because it is such a complete game. Even with the DLC out, it's more than that, I believe. It's sort of like a gestalt, or it's more than the sum of its parts, I would say, in terms of a video game. That's out for PC and PS4 now, and it's in a complete edition package, so you'll have all 3 DLC. Just like Dark Souls 2 had 3 DLCs that were epic, so does Neo. And so let's get to like best narrative. So best narrative would be Wolfenstein 2. It's amazing how this game is so unabashedly unrestrained in terms of its storytelling, its gameplay. Everything about it doesn't let up, and it's not shy at all. It's probably the least shy game I've ever played because it knows what restraint is but throws that out the window. It's like, F this. I'm going to show you Nazis, I'm going to show you racism, I'm going to show you this stuff. Now, that's highly controversial, but, I like a game like that because, it challenges the modern society. It's going to piss off a lot of people, but that's quite funny to me. Now, before you start, if you want to argue about that, that's cool. Argue in the comments section. I might join in, and we'll see. I'd like to join in that. So, best soundtrack would have been Wolfenstein 2 also because I'm really into that hard-hitting stuff that Mick Gordon, the composer, did for Doom and also does for Wolfenstein 1 and now Wolfenstein 2. But it's just that Nier Automata was a breath of fresh air. Somehow the atmospheric and beautiful music went with chopping robots and into pieces and somehow aided the mind-boggling and heartbreaking storyline, I suppose. So that's really cool in my opinion. It's very rare that you get these atmospheric type stuff in fantasy games, in these action-packed games that Platinum is known for. So yeah, it's freaking awesome. So anyway, those are my candidates, and I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to comment and subscribe. Thanks.